Well, good afternoon everybody, and actually I'm a teacher as well, so you know that the name really fulfills all of its potential, doesn't it? But I've given up on the teaching bit now, and I'm the Director of Children's Services. And for me, it's a really important thing to be the corporate sponsor for the work that we're doing around our technology enabling. Because I am not the technician, I'm not the technical lead in the council. I probably spend too long with my technology day to day, but actually that's not the main purpose of my job. And so I hope that I bring a user's perspective to the way that we do our work. I think that the work that we've done, which I'm going to take you through a bit of the journey, is always punctuated with all of the emotion that there is around technology and the kind of the sweetie box idea, because if you survey staff, some of the indicators of how much we love our staff are to do with how much technology we're prepared to allegedly buy for them or give them or find for them. And of course they are living in a world where if they choose to, they can buy all sorts of fantastic technology. And I think sometimes we're caught in the trap where people think, oh, our technology's got to be as good as our home technology. And actually, when I think about my own home technology, the amount of time that the iPlayer seems to spend buffering instead of actually playing me what I want to see is just as irritating as some of the things that happen with my work technology. And so I think we get a bit confused and dragged away by the idea that all our employees have got something so much better at home, and that's what they desire when they're at work. I think one of the other challenges for us, and I'll go through this a bit later on, is that people have this idea that technology can do anything. And interestingly, one of our politicians asked me about some information that he thought we might be able to provide. And I said, well, it'll probably take us about 4 days to get it for you. And he said, oh, can't you just press a button and out it comes? And I think, you know, even for people who know a lot, I think they think that there's some magical piece of software that will do everything. And what they forget is that every piece of software comes with a price tag, and some of those price tags are really just not affordable for us in public services. So, we do want to try and use technology. This is our aim, is to get our staff to be as productive as they can possibly be, while using really good and the right tools to do their jobs. And interestingly, it won't always be the technology, although I think that sometimes people believe that it will be, but I'll try and take you through that. So, we started this journey a long time ago. In 2006, we started a whole smart working journey, which was about reducing the number of buildings that we own, reducing the number of desks that we had to put staff at, also beginning to reduce staff, moving people around from office to office in order to achieve this, getting people away from paper into a purely digital way of keeping records. That was huge for children's social care, getting all of the records digitalised and the rest of the records now stored in a garage somewhere under lock and key. So we began that, and in the teeth of a lot of hostility by a lot of staff, who, even though they were getting new kit and a lovely new environment to work in, somehow found it very, very challenging until they got there, until they found they all had brand new laptops, or most of them did, and that most of them could sit at almost the same desk most of the time, and that they would be able to do their work more efficiently. And they started saying things like, oh, this feels like a really professional place to be working, which they've never said before. So each time you go through it, you've got the resistance, as you will know, to get through. And we did release a lot of capital out of that, some of which we invested in the laptops for all staff. And although that was great, actually what it did was it turned us all into people who were just sitting almost like call centre operators. So you had a laptop, you can sit at a desk, you can put a pair of headphones on, you can answer the phone, but is that actually the job that we do? Well, I mean, in a council like ours, most of our staff work on housing, issues to do with people needing rehousing, sorting out our building stock, sorting out our children who maybe need social work intervention, supporting our schools, sweeping the streets. So actually that sitting at a desk technology was okay for some people, but probably not the right thing for everybody. Then we had a freeze on new purchases. So we've all still got the laptops that we have at our desks, and they still work, but they seem to get, like old people, they get slower and slower by the day. So it is more and more challenging for us. And of course, like every other bit of technology, we're stuffing more and more into those old laptops. So we then tried some rather different solutions, and I was really keen on this. I bought myself an iPad. When I bought the iPad, I expect to think I'm some kind of dinosaur, but I went into the Apple shop and they said, of course, you might want this kind of memory because you'll be watching films. And I'm going, no, I don't do anything like that with my iPad. You know, within weeks I was watching BBC iPlayer in bed and shopping and just doing all sorts of things with it. So what then began to happen was that more and more people started to buy their own devices and to demand, really, to be able to use their own devices for work. And I think to some extent we have been able to do that very successfully, but of course there's always in the background hovering this kind of, you know, data security says no, computer says no, you may have to stop doing this, or it's not going to work anymore. So there's an anxiety about all of that. So I think we're really aware that no one size fits all. We're already a very different council than we were 7 years ago. We can't buy one system that everybody in the council will be able to use. And I think that, sadly, we also can't buy one system that means that all of the different bits in it will be able to talk to each other, because I think that's probably something that's also a step too far, even though it would be really helpful if they could. So, one of the other big challenges about this has been the financial situation. And to begin with, when I took on chairing the piece of work that we're doing at the moment, I naively thought that perhaps we could do this project, and by doing that we could save a whole lot of money, because in Islington we've got to save another 50 million over the next couple of years, and then there'll be more to follow. So I naively thought that this would help us to save money. What I'm now acutely aware of is that because we had that spending freeze earlier on, our technology and our infrastructure are now so ancient that unless we spend some money, we're going to come to a complete halt. So although we will be able to enable people to work smarter and to achieve more with less people, we're actually going to have to put some capital into this in order to make these things happen. So it isn't a simple thing about saving money. We're going to have to spend quite a lot in order to make our staff more effective. We need a much more responsive workforce, I think. We did some work which I'll talk about later on, where we looked at some of the behaviours of our staff, and I very quickly realised that our workforce believe that they're responsive because they rush around trying to be helpful to people, but actually that's just slowing them down, and so they keep coming back to the office and they produce big packs of paper to take to people, and they go and give them to people, and of course that slows them down further and spends loads of money on printing, and so it's not nearly as responsive as our workforce believe that they are. We've also got, as you know, you're very aware, big changes in the shape of the way that we work with our partners and with central government as well as with other local government. And because of the constant change in the nature of the technology, there are huge opportunities out there, but they're not always visible to me, and they're not always visible to even our own staff. So one of the things that we have to be very brave about in this challenge is to allow people to come to us with some of their solutions. and to be unafraid of the people that know much more than us. I know that people younger than me will always know far more than me about this area, because that's just the way of things, and that's absolutely fine. And I think we have to live with being allowed to invite in what people bring as a solution, rather than saying, no, here is the corporate solution and it's got to be like this, and there's no other way of doing it, because that will make us even slower. So there we are with our ageing infrastructure, an increased business risk, because as the infrastructure is so ancient, we still take lots of paper out with us, and that paper doesn't always stay in the places that we want it to be. And I do have a recollection of the most appalling incident way back in 2009, when we were doing all of our office moves as part of our smart working, and there was a telephone call because a filing cabinet that had been disposed of in the Holloway Road as part of a whole lot of extra office furniture we no longer needed, contained a whole lot of children's files that hadn't been seen, because the files had kind of gone over the drawer and got stuffed down the back, and somebody had found all of these. And it was a very unpleasant few days while we sorted out why this had happened and what had happened. So that business risk lies with us all the time. If it's not children's personal data, it's employees' personal data that we need to be able to protect. But of course, the other challenge is that just because you haven't got paper anymore doesn't mean that the risk isn't there. Actually, the risk is often there even more once you're using technology, because technology isn't always so visible to the user. So you can't always see how many attachments you've got to something, and so then off it goes before you realise that there's a whole lot of invisible attachments that are going with the message that you're sending. So that business risk is there all the time. I'm just glad we're not NatWest, and it hasn't gone quite that badly. So, what has been our response? Well, firstly, to try and support what we're doing in the business and what we need in the business, as well as just get any new system up and running. We do aim, as I've said before, to try and improve our customer satisfaction as well. We've done some interesting small-scale experiments with admissions to schools. So we took a big risk this year, and we said we're not going to put the paper form for applying for a secondary school in the back of the brochure. If someone comes in and asks for it, we'll give it to them, but we'll just say apply online. And 86% of people applied for their child's secondary school online this year, and didn't also bring in a paper form, which of course was our worst nightmare, because you then have to match up the electronic application with the paper application, and quite often, surprise, surprise, those two are different. So we have managed to get away from that particular nightmare by being brave and being careful that what it does is it helps parents to apply effectively and quickly, and to keep a better record, and to be sure that their application really has been received. Because those are the things they worry about, is where did my form go, and will someone have lost it, and then my child won't have a school placed. So these principles about making sure that we do contribute to savings, I've touched on, and I'll talk a bit more about that, are at the heart of all of the work that we're going to be progressing as we go through the next year, 18 months. But the first phase of it is to just have an updated IT environment. So none of the applications are nice things and toys, but just the basic internal infrastructure, getting itself right and prepared for the work that we need to do next. So, we've started the work of really trying to transform all of our business by looking at a lot of work streams all at the same time, which you may not be able to see here, but let me tell you what some of them are. So one of these, it's all supported by our Working Without Walls, our technology enabling, but one of these is our new customer centre if you were an Islington resident and you really wanted to come and sort out your planning application for a bit of extra garden shed or something in the back of your garden, previously you used to be able to come into our centre and you could talk to some of the planners upstairs if you were very patient and prepared to wait for them to come down and see you. But if you wanted to sort out some repairs, because you also have an elderly parent living in one of our homes, you might have to go somewhere else. So now the whole of our business is going to be conducted from one centre up at the other end of Upper Street, and we've tried to design it so that whatever your need, you'll be able to come in. Somebody may speak to you and say, why is it that you come here? So that we can try and direct you to the right person. There'll be desks where you can do your own applications online if you didn't do it at home first, or you can come and sit and talk with our staff, or you can come to a very tricky meeting about some social work issue. All of them will be in the same place but in different designated parts of this building, and the technology should make it work. And eventually we have this fantastic idea that there'll be floor walkers who'll come up to you, a bit like when you're at the Eurostar terminal and you're waiting for your ticket, and they'll just say, you know, have you got your ticket already? Have you got your parking permit already? Okay, you haven't? Well, I'll just do it here on my handheld online. Just tell me your house number again, and then suddenly, within minutes, it's all done. That's where we would like to go. And at the moment, the builders are in to change the physical configuration of the building, but we're trying to get there. So that's one of the things that we're doing, and that's also saving us £1 million a year, because we've sold another building, we've come out of it, so therefore we don't have to pay for that building. We've brought everyone into a smaller space. So that's some of the work streams that we're doing to try and make sure that we change residents' experience of their interactions with us, and hopefully make them less dependent on us carrying out those transactions for them. So our other vision is about just being able to log on and go wherever you are, whatever you're doing, not so much on the working from home idea, but working from where it is appropriate to work. I was interested to read in the Observer a few weeks ago. They have that employment section, and they always have some slightly light-hearted section there about how to get on with your new boss when you're a student or something. And part of that talked about how to annoy your boss. One of the things was, I've got this marvellous idea about working from home, because I think we all know that working from home doesn't necessarily mean working from home, it means being at home, not necessarily working. So what we're trying to look at now is making sure that if you are somebody who's gone to see a vulnerable adult to help them about their rent support application, you can go there with your technology, you can scan their sensitive documents, you can actually sit with them and sort out the application, and you can then leave the vulnerable adult knowing that the whole piece of work has been transacted while you were there in front of them, and they know that a letter confirming it has actually been sent into the post through that one event where you've been with them. So that's the idea about being able to log on anywhere and just go. It sounds really attractive, and it's really, really challenging, and we talk about this all of the time, because the more of the firewalls that there are around the data, the more difficult it becomes for us to use our own devices and to just log on and go, or else you have to have lots and lots of codes in order to be able to do that. However, we want to do it, and we want to make sure that we do have a real culture of confidence and behaviour change. I'm really embarrassed to say that there are still one or two people who we employ who say they don't have access to email, which I find really extraordinary. But so there's a whole scale of people who are much more advanced than me, and those who really don't have any access yet to technology. I bet they've got mobile phones though. So, just moving on to what we've tried to do, as I think I've explained already, is we've tried to make sure that there's ownership from the top around getting the business right, not getting the technology right. The technology supports all of that. And so we do have an active programme board that consists of me and leaders from all the other council departments, as well as my technology colleagues there too, but it's not them that's driving it. And that does feel very different. I have to say, 5 years ago, it felt like the technology people were telling me what to do and how to do it, and it's certainly not like that now. So, in order to do this change, we thought we'd better go out and find out how people were working at the moment and try and get rid of some of the myths. So we tried to identify what were the range of work styles in order to be able to then see, so what would the new ways of working be, what tools would people need? Do they really all need iPhones and iPads? Because I don't think they do. But people think they do because it's part of the sweetie box idea. And then we wanted to be able to bring people with us so that we could change the behaviours and the culture and eventually provide some people with new endpoint devices. So we went off and had interviews with managers. We engaged with the Disabled Staff Forum because those staff have got specific needs. We looked at our elected members and what they require. And we looked at all of the requests for tablet devices, because sometimes that does tell you what people are trying to do in their work. Sometimes it just tells you they've fallen in love with the technology, but sometimes it tells you that they are trying to do something different. We went out and did a work style survey and interviewed various staff who were out and about, and that was where we found that people had kind of got very entrenched behaviours that were probably nothing to do with whether or not they had technology. So, as I was mentioning earlier, one trainer that we interviewed went out, did a lot of fantastic training for our children's centres, but she had to keep coming back to the office because she had to take these suitcases full of papers with her to give away as kind of party gifts to everyone that she was training. And I've got to hurry up now, so I won't tell you all, except to say that what we're trying to do is to make sure that she doesn't keep coming back, and that she does her training without giving out all of those pieces of paper. And that means that she doesn't have to keep coming back to the office over and over again. So, we had 48 meetings. We looked at all of the work styles and the technology that supported them. We created a variety of scenarios, and we found that most teams are mobile in some way or another. Only 7 were actually completely office-based. So there is a real need for people to have very different devices that I think can help them to do their work more quickly. We had a survey. The most interesting thing about the survey is not here. I'm going to run through this quickly. The most interesting thing about the survey was that 95% of staff said that they worked from up to 1 day a week from home, and actually only 300 of those 4,500 logged on during that period of time. So that's the bit that I thought was most interesting that's not actually here. But so it tells you something about this working from home thing that I do have a bit of an obsession about. So we know what our needs are, we know what the challenges are, and where we are now is that we're trying to identify exactly what would be the new processes that people would follow, so that we can then make sure that they've got the right devices to go with them. We're going to start with some pilots, hopefully some pilots that show us about the different ways that people could work, And once we've done those pilots and evaluated them, then we'll be going out possibly to purchase some of the new devices. I find it really difficult because I would like to do it much more quickly, and I know that in this financial climate, if we don't get it right, then we will end up purchasing the wrong things. But I also know that the longer it goes on, the faster the kit changes, and so that by the time we get to the solution, actually the solution will be different. So there's a real time attention to all of this. But I think that what we've really learned and what has slowed me down is that unless you look at what people do and what they're trying to do and look at that carefully first, you will end up spending a fortune on things that other people tell you are going to meet your needs when they really clearly will not meet your needs. So getting that clear, and then being clear that also a one-size-fits-all piece won't work, is probably the way to having sustainable organisational change. And I'll leave it there so that I haven't taken up too much time.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Eleanor.